Thank you for the introduction. The agenda that was mentioned here has a lot of things, right? I'll just try to distill it into some 3, 4 main important ones. I'm audible, right? Yes. Nice. Yeah. So I would be seeing it from a particular lens of how the CMO role is getting redefined, or is it even getting redefined? Right? Both are great questions to talk about. But let me check one thing. When you saw this statement, the changing face of CMOs, what came to your mind? Did you think of it as a pessimistic statement or an optimistic statement? Did you think that it will be a rant by a CMO trying to grasp the changing realities, the changing dynamics, and trying to figure his way out? If yes, then you're probably right. Okay. That is exactly what we are grappling with here. I myself have spent hours going through LinkedIn posts, expert articles, soaking up experiences from my peers, trying to understand how the expectations from a CMO are changing and how I should change accordingly. What I've realized is that we are all in the same boat, but on very different journeys. 20 years ago, and I talk from an FMCG marketer's experience. I've spent all my career in FMCG selling physical products. So whatever I say will be mostly from that experience. And of course, I will be saying a lot of statements as a general sweeping statements. It does not mean everyone is doing it or not doing it, but please take that with a pinch of salt. It's for brevity. So 20 years ago, the work of a CMO was fairly well cut out. There were clear-cut expectations. All CMOs looked the same. They did almost the same job, same work. Of course, there were differences depending on the size of the company and the sector or industry they were in. But more or less, there were far more commonalities in what they did than what it is today. Today, with different business models, different distribution channels, different media, it is not as clear-cut as it was earlier. Hence the confusion regarding what should the CMO exactly do. On top of that, the role is getting splintered into growth, strategy, acquisition, retention, terms which were unheard of 10 years ago. And on top of even that, marketing is expected to deliver sales in the short term. So what exactly should a CMO do and focus on? There's no clear-cut answer to it. This is more of a sharing session to help me understand what eventually we should be doing. Whatever it is, one thing is very clear is the CMO is no longer a marketer. Now again, you could see that as a positive statement or a negative statement depending on the point of view. If you see it as a negative statement, that you agree with it, what you're basically trying to say is that marketing or marketer is losing her core identity. What marketing was known for within the organization and without. That is changing, that is getting diluted, which is absolutely true. But I would go far enough to say a lot of that blame is on the CMO himself. Because a lot of places, they have allowed themselves to get too much into the daily operations part of it, the marketing operations. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting down marketing operations. Operations, in fact, has become so much more exciting and rewarding than earlier. There is so much data to chew on, graphs to present. It gives a sense of accomplishment. It has attribution. It has a lot of things going for it which wasn't there earlier. So clearly, we will go there. And a marketer should be doing that, no doubt, but not a CMO. So I choose to see this statement in a positive light. This is an opportunity for the CMO the role to make a comeback as the CBO or the Chief Business Officer, the integrator of all the departments, the one role that will rally all the different CXOs towards a common cause. There is a chance to make a greater impact on the business goals. Given a chance, everyone would do that. I would also do that. Another reason why? Because the person, let's say a young person with 5 years of experience in my team, now has far more knowledge of the tools than I have had or will ever have. Earlier, the knowledge base was directly proportional to the number of years of experience in the team or in the organization or in business. That is no longer the case. Additionally, the person, she has tools to help make a direct impact on at least the short-term business goals. And then there are agencies, specialists who are helping her out with the creatives and the delivery. So if she is able to do all of this, which I can do or I'm expected to do, but why should I interfere in that? I would let her do it. So where is my value add as a CMO? I definitely delegate in the short term. That's one great value add I can do. The kids today are doing a far better job than I would have done in their place right now or 20 years ago. So how do I stay relevant? No quick answer to it, but the mantra that I follow is to focus on demand generation and not demand fulfillment. Subtle difference, but still a big difference. One is long-term, one is short-term. One is about sales conversions, fulfillment. The other one is about generating demand in the future. Which is basically saying we are talking about balancing the long and short of it. Of course, there has been a lot of discussions on this, and there's even been a wonderful book written on it. Both need to be balanced, that is for sure. The general consensus is that it is not long or short, it is long and short. Both have to be done. Great. But the point I'm trying to make here is that as a CMO, I have to focus on the long and not the short. It is not possible to do justice to both wearing the same cap. The CMO is the captain of the ship. And as the captain of any ship, the goal is to help the ship stay the course and reach the destination safely. It is not about worrying the next 20 knots which are coming up. One captain did prioritize speed over safety 100 years or so ago and took the whole ship down with it, quite literally. That was known as the Titanic. So even the best of ships will go down if we are not worried about the long term. Now, easier said than done. This requires a lot of balancing and a change in the working style of it. Right? I have figured out 8-10 things that work for me that I'm trying to implement in my working style so that I balance both. Right? I've called them mantras. You can call them 10 commandments because the 10 sounds better. I've just made it 10. It could be 8, it could be 12. I have added 8, I made 10. I've written it for success because it looks good as a heading, but I think it's more about me staying relevant, right? Changing as per the times. So what are the 10? I'll quickly get to that. The first one. Yeah, there are 10, so the font size goes smaller. First one, 50% of advertising goes waste. We've always known that. 50% of advertising goes waste. We don't know which 50%. Digital advertising came in with the promise that we'll be able to identify that 50% wastage and thereby track and eliminate it. That has not happened. I don't think so it will ever happen. It will never get eliminated. We should make peace with it. We should accept it and be prepared for it. Max we can do is keep focusing on that 50%, reduce it by 50%, but it will not go away. Consistency of messaging works better. We now have evidence that a consistent message works better and harder in the long term. Now, what do I mean by that? This I'm talking about is the brand story. Of course, digital advertising also gives us the benefit of targeting different messages to different consumer segments. That also is very good. But how do we balance both? The key is be consistent with the brand story, use different narratives. Acquiring a customer is far easier than retaining them. Customer acquisition is easy. With performance marketing, it is very easy. but anybody can do it. That's basically giving incentives and spamming. That's what it crudely boils down to. So I would always say focus on retention and not acquisition, because retention is long term. Physical distances are collapsing. This is not just the physical distance between the brand and the consumer, but also the consumer and the retail store, the point of purchase. Now, these are already having profound impacts on how we do our brand messaging, how we do our business, how do we do our distribution, on everything. This will only get more and more complicated in the future. Very often, we get billed on the input metrics. We present the output metrics. But what we should be focusing on are outcomes. Right? It is written focus on output metrics, that's a typo there. Focus on outcomes. That's the long-term impact on the overall brand. There is no such thing as digital or physical, right? There's a very crude and term which I don't like, which is phygital. But what to do it? That's the truth now. Even in traditional media, when we see print or out of home, the demarcation between physical and digital is collapsing. So now I try not to do any campaign or any activity which is not phygital. And by this I mean on both ways. It is very easy right now to add a digital component onto a physical media. We see it on Times of India every Sunday. Right? No big deal. What is very crucial is there should be a physical leg to every digital campaign or digital messaging. As a person selling a physical product, it's far easier for me to do that. But that physical touch, feel, sensorial experience is very important, which I now feel a lot of D2C brands, even in my CPG space, are missing. They forget to add the physical sensorial experience. Next. Attribution is a mirage. I'm sorry, I think there was just a discussion on attribution and all of that. I'm saying perfect attribution is a mirage. Right? You can, of course, the software will throw up some data, some attribution and all, but it is up to us whether to believe it or not, how much to, and what do we do with it. We should not get into a trap of trying to justify our spends through attribution in every case. It is up to us to justify it to ourselves and more importantly to the management. So better to focus on holistic plans. Right? Like somebody was mentioning here, sorry, I came in late, I didn't get the name. They mentioned that don't focus on ROI, focus on ROAS. That's a more holistic view, in my opinion. That's a more long-term impact. Brand building or performance marketing. Right? It's just a line here, but it can take a whole session. My point of view, I don't even want to get into that debate, what is brand building and what is performance marketing. People say both brand can also do performance, performance also builds brand. I think marketers all over the world have wasted so much time in just discussing the nuances of these that it does not matter anymore. What matters is whatever activity I'm doing, what is its impact on the brand funnel? Whether it is via performance or via brand doesn't matter. The brand funnel is important. Next, communication is only one P of the marketing mix. I do agree that it is probably the most exciting of the marketing mix. There is so much happening there. It is out there in the world. Budgets are being allocated, discussed, debated, that it seems like 80% of our job is this. But that is always short term. There are other Ps. We should also, marketing is about the other boring Ps also, the product, the packaging, the pricing, the placement. I believe these boring Ps have a much greater impact, much more long-term impact, go much further in creating a consumer experience than communication. The intergenerational conflict. Now, coming to the consumers here, very soon in 5 years, the rich boomers will pass away. And we will find Gen Z and millennials and Gen Alphas fighting with each other, trying to assert their opinions and influence. Millennials refuse to grow old. Gen Zs refuse to grow up. And Gen Alpha cannot wait to topple these two and take over the world. This will create a very interesting dynamic in future. We've always done one consumer group by generation as our core consumers. I see in the next 5 years, the Gen Alpha will have as much money to spend as millennials. It would be interesting to see the dynamics then. So we need to start preparing for it right now. I try and spend at least 10% of my time to prepare my brand and myself for the next generation. So the experimentation should start today. Number 10, marketing budgets. I said don't take marketing budgets for granted. There's a huge conflict. In fact, even today I was reading a McKinsey article on this one. There is no such thing as marketing budget anymore. Everything is controlled by the CFO. He's at a liberty to cancel, increase at any time. So the CMOs and CFOs should be working more in sync with each other. What has worked for me is not worrying about the budget at all. We should work on proposals, not budgets. Because managements fund outcomes. They don't fund activities. That whole stakeholder management strategy internally should change for us. What has worked for me is going forward with a zero-based budgeting mindset. I have no budgets. I don't care how much I have. Maybe I have zero. I'm not in favor of zero-based budgeting. That's a very silly thing. It creates a lot of stress within the organization. But going with that mindset helps. In fact, what I found is, in this year when I started going with this mindset, it gives me greater peace of mind than trying to worry and be awake at night worrying the CFO canceling my budget the next day. So this is what has worked for me till now. Of course, the question will come is, there's so much talk about long-term demand generation, CMO looking it forward, but how will it happen? I think the answer is in point 2. I didn't go too much into it, but I think that's very crucial. There are many ways to generate demand in the long term. I think the most potent of this is the brand story. Every brand needs to tell its own story. Now, there are different facets to it. The brand story, and when I say brand story, I would say this is not about the core of the brand. This is different from the narratives. This is different from the campaigns. Campaigns and narratives, they are built on a consumer insight. When I say my brand story, it is built on a very human insight, a very core myth or a problem that it solves for the human being, not the consumer. I'm trying to make a demarcation here. Consumers change. They are dynamic. Humans really don't change. At their core, they are the same. So building a brand and its story on a human insight is a far more long-term activity than just the campaign and narratives. Having established the importance of that, I should say the brand story will then reveal the product. Very often we create a product and then weave a story around it, which is not bad, which is a good thing. Advertising is all about that. But when there is a brand story, then it dictates the long-term strategy of the brand. All new products flow out of this brand story. That will decide the pipeline. That will decide how the brand goes into newer consumers, markets, or segments. The brand should not rely on others to tell its story. My brand, my story, my storytelling. I should be able to say it in my own way. I'll give you an example. For example, influencer marketing. Right? Contrary to what was said, I don't think so influencer marketing or influencers can build the brand in the long term. Sure, they're very useful, very effective. I do that. I'm part of influencer councils also. All for that. It should be activated from time to time to communicate a certain brand message. But do I really want influencers to be talking about my brand 5 years down the line also? Do I really want my brand to be built on what is called influencer marketing alone? It shouldn't be the core and the center of my marketing strategy. It cannot. In fact, influencers are getting smarter. They are becoming content creators and now are even launching their own products everywhere, India, outside. They are going in the right trajectory. And here we have brands and FMCG brands who've built marketing, written the laws of marketing. They are going in the opposite direction and handing over the reins to influencers to tell their story. Right? People in FMCG know who I'm talking about. It's a big mistake, I think. Brand needs to create its own space to tell the story. Whether it is on their own website, apps, third-party platforms, doesn't matter. But when you create a space to tell the story, you allow a context to be framed around that story. The context is very important to the story. This could be even inside the store when the clutter increases. And by store, I mean both physical and digital stores. As the clutter increases, how do you create a space not just for visibility or attention grabbing, but also to tell the brand story so that you can set the context? Brand should not short sell its story. If you're so confident about the brand story, you're confident about your brand, then demand full price for it. Why at least reduce your dependence, over-dependence on performance and discounting? If you're not demanding full price for your story, then it's a sneaky way of acquiring consumers. Okay? It's barely discounting. I don't think a customer can be said to have been acquired till the time she has gone through the whole brand funnel and then purchased your product, and that too at its full price. Anything other than that is discounting. Let's not kid ourselves. That's sneakiness, that's not long term. Can you make the consumer buy your product at the full price? Last, this is about the consumer. The brand and its story eventually resides in and is propagated by its consumers. Right now, we do tell our story, right? And we tell it effectively. But the cost of messaging in terms of frequency and everything, that's exceeding. It's becoming more and more expensive to do that. So it will not be sustainable in the long run. Frequency used to be 3 earlier, then it became 6, 16, 20, I don't know where it will go. The costs are also going up of digital advertising. In future, the brand flywheel will start once the consumer starts telling the story. This has always been the case. It used to be called word of mouth marketing. But it was always one part of the marketing mix. I'm saying that this will eventually be the aim of all my brand marketing. So that tomorrow, the consumer starts telling my story. Because once the consumer starts saying that, then it reduces my cost of acquisition, retention, loyalty, whatever be the case. In future, I don't want influencers telling my story. In future, I want the consumers telling my story. That is what will lead to long-term sustenance and generate more demand. Thank you.